The city of Jericho stood like a jewel amid the desert plains of Canaan, a fortress of stone and sun-baked clay that had endured for centuries. Its walls, towering and double-layered, rose above the Jordan Valley like the ribcage of an ancient beast, guarding the life that pulsed within. Inside, the air smelled of barley, dates, and the slow-burning oil lamps that flickered behind mud brick windows. The people of Jericho believed their walls were eternal. Archaeologists, even in modern times, would one day uncover the ruins of such fortifications, thick defensive ramparts that had once circled a Canaanite stronghold around the time when Israel camped east of the Jordan. Jericho was more than a city. It was a statement of power. The Amorite and Canaanite kings who ruled there worshipped gods carved from stone and wood, Baal, the storm giver, Asherah, the mother goddess, and a host of lesser deities invoked for rain, fertility, and war. The temple courtyards echoed with the sound of ritual drums and the cries of priests offering incense to the sky. Life was bound by the rhythm of superstition, the belief that the gods of Canaan held the keys to prosperity and destruction alike. Among the merchants and traders who lived within Jericho's walls was a woman named Rahab. Her house stood on the outer wall, overlooking the desert expanse beyond the city gates, a position that offered both opportunity and peril. The scriptures describe her as a harlot, a woman whose livelihood was entwined with travelers and strangers who came to the city, Joshua 2:1. In ancient Canaanite culture, such women often served not only as innkeepers, but as social intermediaries, those who heard rumors, exchanged information, and moved in circles where secrets were bought and sold. Rahab had seen many travelers pass through her door. She knew the scent of Egyptian linen, the accent of Phoenician sailors, the gait of Moabite traders, and the solemn pace of men from faraway lands. Yet none had unsettled her heart, like the two who came one evening as the sun bled red across the horizon. Strangers from the east, cloaked and cautious, their eyes alert with the tension of men who carried forbidden purpose. They were Israelites, though they spoke little of themselves. The rumors of their people had already reached Jericho, a wandering nation that had crossed the wilderness for 40 years, guided by a God who parted seas and sent plagues upon Egypt. The merchants whispered of a recent miracle, the defeat of Sihon and Og, the mighty kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, Numbers 21:21-35. Entire cities had fallen before this people. Fear had become Jericho's unseen inhabitant, haunting its streets long before the Israelites set foot near its gates. Rahab listened as one of the men spoke quietly, asking for a place to rest. His voice carried the weight of caution. She understood instantly what they were: spies. To harbor them would be treason. Yet as she looked into their faces, she sensed something beyond fear, a strange conviction that this moment was written long before either of them had drawn breath. When word reached the king of Jericho that Israelite men had entered the city, the alarm spread swiftly. Messengers were sent to Rahab's house, for her dwelling on the wall was the most likely refuge for such outsiders. "Bring out the men who have entered your house," the king's agents demanded, "for they have come to spy out all the land," in Joshua 2:3. Rahab's mind raced. The pounding of fists on her door mingled with the sound of her own heartbeat. Upstairs, beneath bundles of drying flax laid upon her rooftop, the spies hid silently, their lives suspended by her next words. She turned to the men at her door with a calm she did not feel and said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was to be shut at dark, the men went out. I do not know where they went. Pursue them quickly, for you may yet overtake them." Joshua 2:4-5. The soldiers believed her. In the confusion of twilight, they ran toward the fords of the Jordan, seeking the invisible. As their footsteps faded, Rahab ascended to her roof. There, beneath the twilight sky, she stood among the flax stalks and looked upon the two men whose lives she had just saved. In that moment, she crossed a line that could never be retraced, a line between the gods of Canaan and the God of Israel. Her voice was steady, yet filled with awe. "I know that the Lord has given you the land," she said, her words trembling like the flames of her oil lamp. "The terror of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and no courage remained in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath. Joshua 2:9-11. Those words were more than confession, they were conversion. A woman once bound to the idols of Jericho now declared allegiance to the invisible God of Israel, a decision that would alter the course of history. In a world where faith was measured by visible idols, Rahab's faith was a rebellion against everything she had ever known. She then made a covenant. "Now therefore, I beg you," she said, "swear to me by the Lord, since I have shown you kindness, that you also will show kindness to my father's house, and give me a true token." Joshua 2:12. Her plea was not for herself alone, but for her family, her parents, brothers and sisters whose lives hung in the balance between destruction and mercy. The spies listened, and one of them took from his garment a scarlet cord, a simple piece of dyed thread, the color of blood and promise. "Bind this line of scarlet in the window through which you let us down," they told her, "and you shall gather your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household into your house. Whoever is with you shall be safe, but whoever goes out of the doors of your house shall be destroyed." Joshua 2:18-19. Rahab agreed, lowering them from the window of her house by a rope that hung over the wall. Below her, the plains stretched silent and wide. The men disappeared into the darkness, escaping toward the hill country to hide for 3 days until the king's search had passed. Rahab returned to her home and tied the scarlet cord in her window, letting it flutter against the wind. It was a fragile symbol, yet it carried the weight of divine covenant, a crimson thread that bound a Canaanite woman to the destiny of Israel. The night after the spies escaped, Jericho lay restless beneath a moon of copper. The wind carried whispers through its narrow streets, and torches flickered along the ramparts where guards kept watch for enemies they could not see. But Rahab sat by her window, her eyes fixed upon the scarlet cord swaying in the breeze. To others, it might have seemed a trivial decoration, the red dye of cochineal common among the merchants of the city. But to her, it was a sign of covenant, the thread that tied her hope to an unseen promise. As she listened to the night, she thought of the stories the spies had told her, tales of a pillar of cloud that led a people by day and a pillar of fire by night, of manna that fell from the heavens, of waters that parted to make a path through the sea. In her childhood, Rahab had bowed before stone idols and wooden effigies, yet none of those gods had ever acted, spoken, or shown mercy. The God of Israel, though unseen, was alive in every word she had heard. Beyond the Jordan, the camp of Israel stirred. The wilderness wanderers had crossed into the land of Canaan, the river having rolled back before them as the Red Sea once had. Joshua, the son of Nun, now led them, a man who had once been a spy himself, 40 years earlier, when Moses still guided Israel. Joshua 3-4. The people had camped at Gilgal, circumcising a new generation born in the wilderness, eating the produce of Canaan for the first time. Manna ceased that very day. Joshua 5:11-12. And when the commander of the Lord's army appeared to Joshua with a drawn sword, the time for battle had come. Inside Jericho, the city sealed itself in fear. None went out, and none came in. Joshua 6:1. The gates were shut, the market silent, and the priests of Baal doubled their offerings, calling upon their gods to strengthen the walls that encircled them. Yet the people's courage had withered. The name of Israel had become a shadow that loomed over every household. Rahab gathered her family within her home as the days passed. Her father, gray and weary, had once mocked her warnings, but now he sat silently near the door, staring at the scarlet cord that marked their only hope. Her mother prayed to gods who would not answer, while her brothers, once proud soldiers of Jericho, were stripped of courage. The sound of distant trumpets drifted from the plains beyond the wall, an eerie, haunting tone that echoed through the stone corridors of the city. Joshua had commanded 7 priests to carry 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the Ark of the Covenant. For 6 days they marched around the city once each day, followed by the armed men of Israel and the Ark itself. The people were forbidden to shout or raise their voices, Only the low, resonant blast of the horns broke the silence. Joshua 6:6-10. From her window, Rahab watched them. Day after day, the procession circled Jericho in solemn rhythm, dust rising beneath their feet, the ark glinting in the sunlight. The people of Jericho mocked at first, then trembled. The Israelites never attacked, never broke ranks. It was not the strategy of men, but the ritual of a divine purpose unfolding with patient inevitability. Each night, Rahab's family huddled in fear. Would tomorrow bring destruction? Would the promise fail? She thought of the spies' words. Keep the cord bound in the window. It was all she could do. Her faith had no sword, no shield, only the memory of a vow sworn by men of God. On the seventh day, the pattern changed. At dawn, the Israelites rose early and marched around the city 7 times. The air itself seemed to tremble with anticipation. From her vantage point, Rahab saw the priests lift their trumpets once more. The 7th circuit ended, and then, for the first time, Joshua's voice thundered across the plain. Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. Joshua 6:16. The sound that followed was like the roar of the earth itself. The people shouted, the trumpets blared, and the ground beneath Jericho quaked. Archaeologists in later centuries would find collapsed walls in ancient Jericho strata, their stones fallen outward rather than inward, as though pushed by an invisible force. The scriptures say simply, the wall fell down flat, Joshua 6:20. The city that had stood for centuries crumbled in a single breath of divine power. Dust filled the air, screams echoed through the streets. Houses splintered, towers crashed, and the proud walls that had guarded Jericho now became its tomb. Yet amid the ruin, one section of the wall stood firm, a house with a scarlet cord hanging from its window. The 2 spies who had once hidden under the flax returned at Joshua's command. Go into the harlot's house, he said, and bring out the woman and all who belong to her, as you swore to her. Joshua 6:22. They moved swiftly through the debris, the smell of smoke thick in the air. Flames licked at fallen roofs, and the cries of the dying mingled with the shouts of Israel's warriors. When they reached Rahab's home, they found her family gathered just as she had promised. Her parents, brothers, sisters, all trembling but alive. The scarlet cord still fluttered in the wind, its color unmuted by the dust of destruction. The spies led them out through the wreckage and into the camp of Israel, where they were given protection and safety. Every other life within Jericho had been lost, but Rahab's household stood preserved, not by stone walls or soldiers, but by faith. Outside the smoldering ruins, Rahab looked back one last time. The city that had been her home was gone, its temples shattered, its idols broken, its king slain. She felt both sorrow and liberation. The God she had once served had proven powerless. Only the God of Israel had shown mercy. Joshua commanded that Rahab and her family be spared and allowed to dwell among Israel. And she dwells in Israel to this day, the record says, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Joshua 6:25. For Rahab, exile became adoption. She left behind the ashes of her city and entered a new world, a nation born from covenant, not conquest. In the days that followed, she was no longer known as Rahab the harlot, but as Rahab the survivor, Rahab the believer. Among the Israelites, she learned their customs, their songs, their prayers. The scarlet cord she had once hung in her window became a symbol she carried in her heart, a reminder that faith once born could bridge even the deepest divides between nations and gods. Years later, Rahab would marry a man named Salmon, of the tribe of Judah, Matthew 1:5. From that union came a son, Boaz, the same Boaz who would one day show kindness to Ruth, another foreign woman drawn into the lineage of Israel's promise. Through Boaz came Obed, through Obed came Jesse, and through Jesse came David, the shepherd who would become king. And from the line of David would arise the Messiah himself. Thus the faith of a Canaanite woman, once despised and forgotten, was woven into the genealogy of redemption. Centuries later, the writers of Scripture remembered her. The author of Hebrews listed her among the heroes of faith. By faith, Rahab the harlot did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had received the spies in peace. Hebrews 11:31. And James, writing to the early church, spoke her name as an example that faith without action is dead. Was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out another way? James 2:25. But beyond these verses lies the human story. The story of a woman who dared to believe in a God she had never seen, who risked everything for a promise whispered in the dark. Her courage did not come from power or lineage. It came from conviction. In a city sealed against the purposes of heaven, Rahab opened her door. In the generations that followed, her legacy became a parable. Scholars and rabbis debated her transformation. Was she a symbol of divine mercy to the nations, or of faith that transcends past sin? Archaeologists uncovered Jericho's ruins, finding evidence of destruction by fire around the late Bronze Age, a layer of ash and brick that bore silent witness to a story older than written history. And yet, through every interpretation, one truth endures, that faith is not confined by walls, nor by past deeds, nor by the judgments of men. Imagine, then, the city of Jericho on that final day, the wind swirling through broken gates, the trumpets still echoing across the valley, the sun rising over a land forever changed. Among the smoke and rubble, one family stands apart, eyes lifted toward the horizon, their lives spared by the scarlet sign of covenant. It is there, amid ruin, that the meaning of redemption takes form. Rahab's story bridges two worlds, the world of Canaan as fading idols and the dawning light of Israel's God. In her choice, the boundaries of nation, gender, and past collapse, revealing a truth that transcends empire and history alike. That faith, when anchored in the living God, can turn shame into honor, fear into salvation, and a harlot of Jericho into a matriarch of kings. The walls of Jericho have long since turned to dust, their stones scattered across the plain, but Rahab's name endures, spoken wherever faith is told as courage, wherever redemption is remembered as mercy. The scarlet cord still hangs, invisible yet eternal, across the pages of Scripture, binding her house to the covenant of grace that would one day encompass the world. And as the sun sets over the ruins, the story of Rahab, the woman behind the wall, remains a testament to a God who sees not as man sees, who finds faith in unexpected hearts, and who turns even the most fragile thread into the line through which salvation descends.